A man does not fall in love as often as he believes. What he usually falls into is desire, attachment, habit, or projection. Carl Jung understood that love, in its deepest sense, is rare. And when it happens, it does not happen by accident. According to Jung, a man falls in love for only two fundamental psychological reasons. Not because of circumstances, not because of timing, but because something inside him is being activated. The first reason is familiar and comforting. It feels safe, recognizable, almost obvious. A man falls in love when a woman resonates with his unconscious image of intimacy, not with who she objectively is, but with what she represents internally. Jung called this projection of the anima. The anima is the inner feminine image in a man's psyche. It is formed through early experiences, emotional needs, and unconscious longing. When a woman appears who fits this inner image, the man does not simply like her. He feels drawn, pulled, captured. He believes he has found love. But what he has found is recognition. She feels familiar, even if they have just met. Her presence stirs emotion. Her absence creates longing. This kind of love feels intense, romantic, even overwhelming. But it is largely unconscious. The man is not relating fully to the woman herself. He is relating to his inner image, reflected back to him. This is why this type of love can fade. Because once the projection weakens, reality returns. And when reality does not match the inner image, disappointment follows. Jung did not consider this false love. He considered it incomplete love. Necessary, but not yet mature. Because the psyche must first project, before it can reclaim. And this brings us to the second reason. The reason that feels unsettling. The reason most people do not talk about. The reason that changes everything. A man falls in love when a woman confronts him with himself. Not when she soothes him. Not when she fulfills expectations. But when she awakens what he has avoided. This love does not feel safe at first. It feels destabilizing. She does not fit neatly into his fantasies. She challenges his self-image. She exposes his contradictions. Around her, he becomes more aware, more honest, more vulnerable. And this is terrifying. Because this kind of love does not flatter the ego. It dismantles it. Jung believed that true love appears when a man is forced into individuation, the process of becoming who he truly is. This kind of woman does not complete him. She disrupts him. She mirrors his shadow, his fears, his unresolved wounds. And yet, he cannot turn away. Not because it feels good, but because it feels real. This love does not depend on illusion. It depends on growth. And growth always costs something. Around her, the man cannot remain the same. Old patterns stop working. Old defenses collapse. He must either evolve or retreat. Many men retreat, not because the love was false, but because it demanded too much consciousness. This is why this second kind of love is rare. It only appears when a man is ready, or when life forces readiness upon him. And when it happens, it changes his inner structure permanently. Even if the relationship does not last, the awakening does. He does not forget this woman, not because she was perfect, but because she became a turning point. From that moment on, he cannot love unconsciously again. What Jung understood, and what many men only realize much later in life, is that these two reasons for falling in love do not exist on the same level of consciousness. The first happens almost automatically. It is driven by longing, fantasy, and unconscious expectation. The second requires inner friction. And friction is uncomfortable. When a man loves through projection, he feels elevated, inspired, seen in the way he wants to be seen. But when a man loves through individuation, he feels exposed. He becomes aware of his emotional limitations, his avoidance, his immaturity. This is why the second kind of love often arrives disguised as conflict. Arguments feel deeper. Silence feels heavier. Distance feels meaningful rather than empty. The woman who awakens this love does not play a role. She does not adapt herself to his image. She remains herself. And this constancy becomes a mirror. Jung believed that the psyche resists growth at first. It prefers repetition to transformation. So when a man encounters a woman who activates this second kind of love, his instinct is often to rationalize his discomfort. He may tell himself that something is wrong, that the connection is too intense, that the timing is bad. But beneath these explanations lies a deeper truth. The connection threatens the structure of his inner world. Because to stay, he would have to change. Not for her, but for himself. This is why many men walk away from the love that could transform them, and return to relationships that feel easier, lighter, more predictable. They choose comfort over consciousness. And yet, something lingers. The psyche does not forget unfinished processes. Years later, this love may return in memory, not as nostalgia, but as a question. What did I avoid? What part of myself did I leave behind? Jung wrote that whatever we do not make conscious returns to us as fate. This is especially true in love. Unintegrated experiences repeat themselves until their message is understood. This is why some men keep falling in love with the same type of woman, again and again, hoping for a different outcome. They are chasing the first reason, while avoiding the second. But repetition without awareness leads nowhere. The second reason does not repeat easily. It appears rarely, and when it does, it demands courage. Courage to stay present. Courage to listen. Courage to tolerate uncertainty. Because this love does not promise happiness. It promises truth. And truth is not always gentle. Around this woman, the man begins to feel responsibility for his inner life. He can no longer blame circumstances. He can no longer hide behind roles. He becomes aware of how he loves, not just whom he loves. This awareness is irreversible. Even if he leaves, even if the relationship ends, he does not return to who he was before. Something has been set in motion. Jung called this the beginning of individuation through relationship. Love becomes a psychological task, not a reward, but a process. And this is why the last reason is shocking. Because it reveals that love is not primarily about happiness. It is about becoming. When love becomes a process rather than an escape, a man begins to notice how much of his life has been shaped by avoidance. Avoidance of pain. Avoidance of vulnerability. Avoidance of responsibility for his inner world. The second kind of love removes these hiding places. It brings him face to face with the parts of himself he has neglected. Jung believed that the shadow does not disappear by being ignored. It waits. And intimate relationships are one of the few places where the shadow feels safe enough to emerge. This is why this love feels heavier. Not because it is wrong, but because it is honest. A man may feel more tired around this woman, more emotional, more sensitive, not because she drains him, but because he is no longer numbing himself. Old defenses no longer function. Sarcasm, distance, control, they fall away, and what remains is raw presence. This presence can feel overwhelming at first. It exposes insecurity, fear of inadequacy, fear of loss. Many men mistake this exposure for incompatibility. They say, "I don't feel at ease," when what they really mean is, "I can no longer hide." Jung understood that true intimacy is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to stay with it consciously. The first kind of love asks little of the man. The second asks everything. It asks him to feel what he has postponed, to speak what he has silenced, to confront what he has projected onto others. And projection collapses quickly in this kind of love. The woman refuses to carry his unconscious material for him. She does not rescue. She does not complete. She reflects. This reflection is not always kind, but it is accurate. And accuracy is what initiates transformation. Around her, the man begins to sense that love is not meant to soothe the ego, but to mature it. This realization changes how he sees relationships. He becomes less interested in chemistry alone, less fascinated by idealization. He starts paying attention to how a relationship affects his inner life. Does it expand awareness, or does it reinforce avoidance? Does it invite honesty, or does it reward performance? These questions arise naturally, not because he has learned them, but because he has felt their necessity. Jung wrote that consciousness grows where resistance is met with reflection. This love creates resistance. But instead of fleeing from it, the man is invited to turn inward. And inward movement is slow. It does not offer quick reassurance. It offers depth. Depth takes time to unfold. Misunderstandings appear. Silences deepen. Moments of clarity alternate with confusion. And yet, something feels alive. Not exciting in the superficial sense, but real. The psyche recognizes this aliveness. It signals that something essential is happening, even if the outcome is uncertain. This uncertainty is not a flaw. It is a sign that the process is active, because anything that is fully predictable has already stopped growing. And this love, above all else, refuses stagnation. As the man remains in this kind of love, he begins to realize that desire alone is no longer enough to sustain him. Attraction is still present, but it is no longer the center. What becomes central is meaning. He starts to ask himself not only, "How do I feel with her?" but, "Who do I become with her?" This question marks a psychological shift. Love is no longer evaluated by intensity, but by transformation. Jung believed that relationships reveal the stage of consciousness a person has reached. In earlier stages, love is about fulfillment. In later stages, it is about integration. Integration means bringing together what was previously split: strength and vulnerability, desire and responsibility, independence and connection. The second reason for falling in love forces this integration. A man can no longer be only the strong one, or only the detached one, or only the rational one. He is confronted with his emotional reality, and emotional reality does not negotiate. It demands acknowledgement. This is why the man may feel conflicted, pulled in opposite directions. Part of him wants to stay. Part of him wants to escape. Both impulses are genuine. One seeks growth. The other seeks safety. Jung did not see this conflict as a problem to be solved, but as a tension to be held consciously. Holding tension without rushing to resolution is one of the most difficult psychological tasks. Most people resolve tension prematurely. They choose certainty over truth. But this love does not allow shortcuts. It slows the man down. He begins to notice how often he has used relationships to avoid himself, how often he has used passion to distract from emptiness, how often he has used distance to protect his fear of dependence. These insights are not intellectual. They are felt, and feeling precedes understanding. Around this woman, his emotional range expands. He experiences tenderness without ownership, longing without fantasy, connection without guarantee. These experiences destabilize old definitions of masculinity. Jung understood that modern men are often disconnected from their inner feminine, from feeling, receptivity, and relational depth. The anima, when integrated, no longer needs to be projected, and this integration changes how love is experienced. The woman is no longer a symbol. She becomes a person, and seeing a person clearly requires relinquishing illusion. Illusion provides comfort. Clarity provides depth. Depth, however, is demanding. It asks for presence in moments of uncertainty, for honesty when silence feels safer, for openness when withdrawal feels easier. This is why the second reason for falling in love is so rarely sustained, not because it is fragile, but because it is exacting. It does not tolerate unconsciousness. It invites the man into a new relationship with himself. And once this invitation has been felt, it cannot be entirely forgotten. Even if the relationship ends, the process continues internally. The psyche keeps working. Questions arise spontaneously. Old habits lose their appeal. Certain choices no longer feel possible, not because they are forbidden, but because they no longer align. Alignment becomes the new measure. And alignment is quiet. It does not seek validation. It does not announce progress. It simply reshapes priorities from within. And as this reshaping unfolds, the man begins to sense that love, in its deepest form, is not something that happens to him, but something that happens through him. As love begins to move through him rather than toward him, the man notices a subtle but profound shift. He becomes less preoccupied with being chosen, and more attentive to how he chooses. This change is quiet. It does not announce itself with confidence or certainty. It emerges as discernment. Discernment replaces urgency. The need to secure the relationship diminishes. So does the impulse to escape it. What remains is presence. Jung believed that presence is the ground of all transformation. Without it, insight remains abstract. With it, even confusion becomes meaningful. In this state, the man starts to recognize how much of his past love was driven by compensation. He sought in women what he had not developed in himself: affection to soothe emotional neglect, admiration to cover insecurity, intensity to escape inner emptiness. These needs were not wrong. They were unconscious, and unconscious needs rule behavior until they are brought into awareness. The second kind of love exposes these dynamics, not through explanation, but through experience. The woman does not supply what is missing. She reveals that something is missing. This revelation is painful, but it is also liberating, because once lack is acknowledged, development becomes possible. Jung wrote that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. This love removes the substitute. It invites the man to suffer consciously, to feel absence without immediately filling it. And in doing so, he discovers resilience. He learns that longing does not destroy him, that uncertainty does not annihilate him, that vulnerability does not weaken him. These realizations alter his inner posture toward life. He becomes less reactive, less defensive, less driven by impulse. This does not make him passive. It makes him intentional. Intentionality emerges when desire and awareness are aligned. Around this woman, the man begins to act from choice, rather than compulsion. He listens more carefully, speaks more deliberately, withdraws less automatically. Silence, when it appears, is no longer avoidance. It becomes reflection. Conflict, when it arises, is no longer a threat. It becomes information. Every interaction carries psychological weight, not because it is dramatic, but because it is honest. Jung understood that honesty in relationship is a form of courage. It requires staying present when the image of oneself begins to crack. This cracking is not collapse. It is opening, and through this opening, a more integrated self begins to form. Not a perfected self, not an idealized one, but a real one. A self capable of intimacy without fusion, connection without loss of autonomy, love without illusion. This capacity does not arrive suddenly. It develops gradually, through missteps, through misunderstandings, through moments of withdrawal and return. The psyche learns through repetition. But now, repetition carries awareness. Patterns are noticed sooner. Defenses are recognized more quickly. Avoidance is felt immediately. And because it is felt, it no longer controls unconsciously. This is how love becomes transformative, without needing to be dramatic. It works slowly, quietly, relentlessly. And as this process deepens, the man begins to sense that what he once called love was often a search for relief, for confirmation, for escape. What he is now encountering is not a search, but a meeting, and meetings, when they are real, change both sides, not by force, not by promise, but by presence that cannot be ignored. And this is why Carl Jung believed that love is one of the most powerful forces in the process of becoming conscious. A man does not fall in love simply to feel good. He falls in love to be changed. The first reason offers comfort and familiarity. The second offers truth and transformation. One allows him to remain as he is. The other asks him to grow beyond who he has been. And that is why the second reason is so confronting. Because it reveals that love is not about being completed, but about being made more real. When love is reduced to chemistry or fantasy, it fades as soon as the illusion dissolves. But when love becomes a path toward awareness, it leaves a mark that time cannot erase. Even when the relationship ends, the inner movement continues. And once a man has experienced this kind of love, he cannot return to loving unconsciously. Something in him has awakened. If this exploration resonated with you, if you recognized patterns from your own life, or felt a deeper question stirring beneath the surface, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here we explore depth psychology, Carl Jung's ideas, and the hidden forces that shape love, meaning, and the inner life. Subscribe, and continue this journey into understanding what truly moves us from within.